Hi, all. Welcome to our weekly forecast for the week of March 16th through March 22nd, 2025. Reminder that I'm now posting these on my podcast, the Feeling Loudly podcast, which is available on all your major podcast platforms, in addition to YouTube, where I originally began posting these forecasts. As usual, I'm going to get into our astrology forecast for the week. So we'll be looking at the major transits that are up this coming week. And then we'll get into our usual 3-card tarot spread to dig a little bit deeper. If you hear any bubbling noises in the background, that's the soup that I'm making. I hope you can't hear it. Okay. Before I get into everything, I want to mention that, as always, I offer recorded tarot readings as well as live tarot readings. So if you're interested in getting some personal support through this eclipse window and through this retrograde season, I'd highly recommend going for a tarot reading. It can be very grounding. It can kind of cut through the noise and help you identify the patterns and the isms and the things that you're missing. If you're interested in actually exploring how this astrology is impacting you at a personal level, you can also book an astrology reading with me. I offer a variety of core foundational readings for new clients and a few readings for return clients too. Okay, let's get into the week. So for the week of March 16th through the 22nd, 2025, we are really beginning this week on Monday. And on Monday, the moon enters Scorpio and the sun forms a conjunction to the North Node in Pisces. So we have a very lunar start to this week, and we're just coming off of the lunar eclipse in Virgo, which was in the wee hours on Friday this past week. I sent out and posted a full description, not full, but I posted a description on YouTube and sent it out via my email newsletter. So if you missed that, go check YouTube or check Substack, where I also posted a breakdown of that eclipse with some guidance and a 3-card spread for that particular lunation. But this week, we're winding down from that eclipse. We're coming off of this peak energy, which was really up for us this weekend. And now the moon is waning from the full moon, and we're experiencing probably a decline in energy as we build toward our new moon solar eclipse in Aries, which will be exact next week. And we'll talk about that next week. This week can feel tiring. And I feel like I've been saying that nonstop, but we're living through pretty tiring and draining astrology. Personally, collectively, you might feel like you're kind of swimming in the soup or moving through really swampy vibes. And that's really on time. We have this mashup in Pisces that we're still working with, and now coming off of this eclipse and building toward our next eclipse with double retrograde. Mercury's now retrograde and Venus has been retrograde. So there's a lot that's shifting, and I keep using the analogy of tectonic plates. When there's Earth that's shifting and these fundamental pieces of our life that feel like they're in flux, it's very easy for us to get tired, especially if we're exerting ourselves and attempting to keep things in place. So if you notice yourself moving toward control patterns and attempting to keep things as they are, whether that's clinging to the existing state of your relationships, of your work, of yourself, like sticking with old patterns just because they're familiar, and not seizing the opportunity to make a different choice, then you will feel extra tired. And that's going to be emphasized this week. As mentioned, on Monday, the moon enters Scorpio. And when the moon is in Scorpio, it's technically in fall. And sometimes that can manifest as us moving through this really deep, kind of sticky emotional material that can feel tiring, especially if we're not super comfortable going there. And winding down from this eclipse, we might be going there or might be getting nudged to go there. Later that day, the sun forms a conjunction with the North Node in Pisces. And this can be a moment where we feel like we're getting a clear picture about what it is that we want to move toward. Like if there is a new choice or a new way of doing things that we're being invited into, it will likely make itself clearer around Monday. And I say clearer, not clear, because we are still kind of in the deluge. Like there's a lot that's moving around. And with all of these Pisces players, it can again feel like we're on the brink of transition and we're just not quite sure where we're going, because it can feel at times kind of hallucinogenic and just up here. And we want to try to bring it down here by finding ways to root in polar Virgo, which means being in the body, practicing attending to the details and the tasks that help keep us sane and alive and well, and doing things in sort of a ritualistic manner that help ground us, whether that's meditation or movement practices or ritual. Whatever it is, even tidying the house and your home space can feel really, really cleansing. Taking a bath, doing something that really attunes you to the material. And I say that in part because the sun forming a conjunction to the North Node in Pisces can at times feel like we're getting sucked up into something, like into this swamp. And again, it's a place where maybe we're finding some degree of clarity, or at least more information about who we're becoming and how our energy is wanting to express itself. That might look like showing up differently in social spaces, or look to wherever Pisces falls in your natal charts and really beginning to kind of express ourselves differently and practice new ways of being. On Wednesday, March 19th, the moon enters Sagittarius and the sun forms a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. So, with our moon entering Sag, we're moving from Scorpio, right? The depths, into Sag, which is a Jupiter ruled sign that can make us a bit more adventurous and spontaneous, that can make us inclined toward discussing philosophy and feeling connected to other people through explorations that feel more high minded. With the moon in Sag, we might feel a bit more buoyant. And sometimes that can be a sort of like, I get puffed up and then I sink a bit. I get puffed up and then I sink a bit. So you might be noticing these fluctuations in energy happening throughout the week, but especially midweek when we have that incline, and then the moon is going to go back into a Saturn ruled sign, or into a Saturn ruled sign. So we feel this maybe surge, and then it could be followed by a dip. And so that little kind of energetic roller coaster is likely a feature of this whole week, and kind of honestly just the vibe for most of this month, if we're being real. Later in the day, the sun forms a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. And when the sun merges with Neptune, the great dissolver, ethereal, mystical, illusionist Neptune, we are often releasing something or letting go of something or learning to surrender. And with the sun, our solar energy, our life force, sometimes that has to do with our own personality. Sometimes it has to do with our own ego identity. Often it relates to just our energy, like the energy that we're bringing to the table is kind of mixed and mashed with this very surreal Neptunian energy that can blur boundaries, that can cause confusion, but that can also offer a great deal of compassion and connection. So this could be a beautiful day for connecting with people over spiritual topics, for connecting over that sort of Sagittarian philosophical and Piscean mystical stuff. And it could be a beautiful time for exploring an art practice or a spiritual practice, or generally doing something where you want to have a bit less structure and rigidity and you want a bit more flow. Keep in mind that you are likely to be tired. And that Sun-Neptune conjunction, again, can draw us away from reality a bit away from our bodies and groundedness. And so this isn't necessarily the week to be making big decisions or to be committing to something, but more so the week to just be exploring how you feel. On Thursday, March 20th, the sun then enters Aries. So it's moving out of mutable water Pisces and into cardinal fire Aries. And this is the start of Aries season and generally the start of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. When the sun enters Aries, we're shifting into this passionate forward movement and a lot of fire, literally, it's cardinal fire. And so there's an initiatory spark. There's something that we might want to push toward or initiate or begin that feels passionate and exciting. And that's likely to be occurring in your Aries house. So always smart to track which house in your natal chart or houses the sun is moving through when it's going through a particular zodiac season. So for Aries season, sun is transiting Aries, and you would look to your Aries house or houses to understand what themes are getting illuminated for you at a personal level. Since the sun is leaving Pisces, we're leaving behind the solar focus on that area of our chart and moving into the solar focus on the Aries part of our chart. On Friday, March 21st, Venus retrograde in Aries forms a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. This moment is a key moment in the Venus retrograde cycle, and I just want to go ahead and read what I wrote in our Venus retrograde guide, which I shared on Substack last month. On March 21st, Venus forms a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius, inviting intimacy and honesty. It's a moment of potent change if we seize it. Something is revealed, or maybe we're revealing it. It might be subtle, but it's worth listening to. And the key question here is, what desires are you ready to reveal? And maybe reveal to another, but potentially just to reveal. This is a moment to be considering our deeper drives, to be maybe doing some shadow work around Venusian topics like love and connection and sensuality and pleasure and beauty and self-worth. Venus is connected to what we value. And so often during Venus transits, we're really thinking about and inspecting those topics and considering what it is that we really place a lot of value on and prioritize in our lives. So this could be a moment for beautiful bonding, or for getting really raw and honest about what we desire in a connection, or just having that conversation with ourselves. Maybe it's not with a partner or another person, but it's just sort of a solo exploration where we're digging through some of our roots and maybe unpacking some old stories about Venusian topics. Following our Venus Pluto sextile on Saturday, March 22nd, the moon enters Capricorn. We experience a last quarter moon in Capricorn, and then the sun forms a conjunction to Venus in Aries. So cardinal energy, Capricorn is cardinal earth, and again, Aries is cardinal fire. This shift from moon in Sag to moon in Capricorn is one that will likely be noticeable. We are feeling probably this lowering of our energy. We might feel as though we are shifting from that sort of buoyant midweek energy where it was like, I want to connect with people, I want to learn, I want to feel tapped in. And maybe now it's like, I need to rest and I need to consider what it is that I'm committing myself to, and if I really have the space and the bandwidth for this right now. Capricorn wants to get practical, and it wants us to be real with ourselves about what we can take on so that we can actually honor our commitments. And in a last quarter moon in Capricorn, when the sun is forming a square to the moon, we are challenged. Our energy and our emotions and our needs feel like they're in conflict. And so maybe stuff that we've committed to is suddenly feeling like a no. And we might need to walk it back, or communicate something, or pare things down, or delegate in order to make it work. So be thoughtful about what you're committing to, understanding that there is a high likelihood that you will not feel up to it, especially if you're someone who's super impacted by the lunar weather. Later that day, the sun forms a conjunction to Venus in Aries. And so again, sun is now in Aries, and this conjunction is occurring with Venus retrograde at 2:39 Aries. So early Aries here. And this conjunction is one that is also illuminating something energetic about this Venus retrograde cycle for us. Sun conjunctions to planets are sometimes called Cazimis. And when the sun meets and merges with a planet in the sky, it's sort of bringing this fire and heat to the energy of that planet. And it can feel like something is combusting, or something is getting hot or fiery or illuminated. And the themes of that planet can really become active and loud. And so in the case of Venus retrograde, again, that's the stuff that we were just inspecting with that Venus-Pluto sextile. And so my words from my guide, from my Venus retrograde guide on this one. On March 22nd, Venus forms a conjunction with the Sun in Aries, illuminating the energetic invitations of this retrograde. This may be a moment for bravery, where you're called to buck old rules and roles and rewrite the script. And the key question here is, what does it feel like to embody your desires? So just like the day before, you were exploring that material, right? You were digging through it and maybe uprooting something or disposing of something or overturning some old Venusian story. Maybe it's self-limiting belief about your role in connection, or old experiences that have made you emotionally unavailable or fearful of love, or on the other hand, really anxious and sort of like desperate for completion through another. There are all sorts of deep stories that can come up when Venus and Pluto meet, and often it has to do with attachment and control and power dynamics and connections. So if that material is up for you and you find yourself trying to cling to something or someone, or trying to cling to an old idea or an old identity that's really feeling stale and old for you, this moment, the combination, the Venus sextile to Pluto and then the Sun conjunct Venus, is your opportunity to really try something new. And that's a phrase I'm going to keep repeating this whole eclipse window and this whole double retrograde season, is it's a time to try something new. Like, the opportunity is here and it can feel scary and challenging. But if you seize that moment and you seize that chance to practice a new way of relating, a new way of communicating, a new way of carrying yourself, you might notice real and lasting differences that echo outward and that carry you forward 6 months through our next eclipse season and beyond. Okay, let's get into our tarot reading for this week. Starting off with our anchor card, which represents sort of our overall energy and something to come back to and root in this week, we have the Strength card. So this is a major arcana and it's connected to the sign Leo. The Strength card, speaking of passion, we see a heart that is on fire and it's being held or cupped between two hands. And there's also the infinity symbol, which is typically seen on the Strength card, representing this sort of like interconnection and the looping experiences that we have in life. The infinity symbol is obviously rich with meaning and metaphor and symbolism. So you might want to go look into that or pay attention if you see the infinity loop coming up this week symbolically. The Strength card can at times represent these deep heart commitments that we make that cause us to step up and step out and to do the courageous thing instead of the easy thing. Strength brings a challenge. It's inherently a challenge. And often it has to do with our own egos or our own drives. Sometimes we feel like we're wrestling with the sort of animalistic creature of ourselves and stepping out of maybe the mind that wants to think it to death, and instead stepping toward our authentic desires and getting curious about them. So this can sometimes show up as kind of like a sensual card. Sometimes it's more rooted in, again, the like spiritual or inner explorations that we're doing that draw us toward honesty, toward rawness. And when we see this heart in hands on fire, there's a courage. I mean, think about how courageous it is to hand your heart to someone. Think about how courageous it is to put yourself out there emotionally, to be vulnerable. Leo is a sign that is deeply, deeply drawn toward vulnerability and toward emotional courage. And people often portray Leo people as being like selfish and over the top and dramatic. And sure, that can be true too. But at the core of Leo energy is this deep courage and passion and willingness to reveal oneself, to make oneself vulnerable and raw. And isn't that truly one of the biggest, most impactful and beautiful and badass things that we can do in life, is to put ourselves out there and to offer our heart and to be real and raw and let ourselves be seen, whether or not it goes well, like letting ourselves be seen. And that really feels like an invitation that's very connected to our Aries ingress and absolutely to our Venus-Pluto sextile and our Sun-Venus conjunction. Our challenge this week is the Lovers. So there might be a choice that's in order for us, or that's up for us this week. There might be an important choice that we're called to make, or we might just be weighing our options. The Lovers is a moment of decision. And sometimes that decision is happening in the context of relationships. Sometimes it's happening in the context of our relationship with ourselves. It's about connecting with an old version of ourselves and a new version of ourselves and finding where the two meet and unite, and how we can begin to kind of practice maybe carrying or playing a new role. And the Lovers showing up as our challenge means that this is a very, very worthy one this week. It's one that can absolutely accelerate our growth. It can accelerate our self-awareness. And maybe that means making, again, new choices in relationships and disrupting old patterns that have held us hostage in an old way of being that we don't want to commit to anymore. Finally, our gift this week, the Two of Pentacles, means that this is a week for considering our priorities and asking ourselves what we can carry and what we can't carry. This feels like it carries us into the weekend when the sun or when the moon enters Capricorn and we experience that last quarter moon in Cap. I mentioned needing to kind of weigh your priorities and ask yourself how much you can take on and maybe delegate or like walk something back if necessary. That could be very real, but this is showing up in the upright, and that's telling me that we are able to carry our responsibilities this week and to tackle maybe the mundane and the mystical, or to find the right balance between our social lives and our professional lives, or our personal private lives and our social lives. So there are two probably responsibilities or major things that we're trying to juggle this week. And it does feel like we get to a point where we're really honest with ourselves about what we can take on. And we make the pragmatic, practical choice to commit to something that is doable, setting our sights on something that is doable and not overpromising. That is your week. If you found this forecast valuable, please do like, comment, subscribe, and share. And as always, if you want more, you can become a patron. I just released an eclipse reading that is really rich and dense, and I've gotten good feedback on it. And if you want more from me, then go join me on Patreon. It's only $4, starting at $4 to get special content, exclusive forecasts, and more. And then you can go up in the tiers if you want more group activity, more live readings, and even more personal readings. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a good week.